Hello and welcome to Tabletop Oddity. My name is Jay and today I'm going to be courting controversy once again. Now, one of my last videos I put on a video which was just an opinion piece why I thought Star Wars Legion might eventually temporarily overtake 40k. And yeah, I expected a bit of rage about that one, but I didn't necessarily do it in a controversial way, and the title of this video is going to be why Legion is cheaper than 40k, and part of the answer to that is that it's not. So before we all get our knickers in a twist, let's take our time, simmer down, and see what I'm actually talking about. So in that original video, I mentioned how 40k was more expensive than Legion, and then people gave me examples where it wasn't. And I was a bit confused by this because I used to play Warhammer Fantasy, and one of my overriding thoughts about that when I used to play was that it was expensive. And when I saw Legion, I was like, oh, that's pretty cheap for the total of the army. And that's basically what it boils down to. It boils down to how many points an average tournament list is played at and how many models that requires. Because comparing points is a little bit irrelevant, but comparing percentage of a required full tournament legal army is probably okay. So when I say that it's not, I've made a little spreadsheet. I always make my little spreadsheets. Yeah, so we're going to get a little bit into depth. We are going to look at actual models, which people might find a little bit more interesting. But basically, a unit of 7, I'm only going to try and look at infantry troopers here, because if I go into vehicles and stuff like that, we're going to probably descend into madness. So I've done a list here where I'm just looking at the prices of some infantry units, and then I've got these two lists here. One won the Las Vegas Warhammer FLG, whatever they're called, Frontline Gaming tournament, and the other is one that's on the Frontline Gaming's website regarding making a list from the Primaris Space Marines in the Dark Imperium box set. So we'll get onto them in a minute. Now, cost-wise, Star Wars Legion at 7 troopers will cost you $25 on the FFG website. That's $3.57 a model. You can get it discounted and the price will be on the screen. Both the link to all my spreadsheets that we see here, I'll put in the link in the description below. Now, comparing a Star Wars Legion trooper, say, to a Space Marine trooper is a little bit hard to do. Like, there's different versions of Space Marines, they have different sizes, they have different options, they have more parts and stuff like that. So it is actually quite difficult to do. And GW seem to have like a tier list of pricing, which I'm not necessarily sure I understand, but some are cheaper and some are more expensive. And in some ways it makes sense. For example, let's have a look at these easy to build Primaris Space Marines. You get 3 for $15. Right? Makes sense. These are the bigger models as well, so they're not like the cheap infantry ones. But if you compare them to the easy to build Primaris Aggressors, who are obviously like pretty much double in price, these are obviously bigger. They're not just like your standard infantry. These are sort of like a larger infantry. So you can't really compare them, if that makes sense. So it is quite difficult to do. Now, if we look at, you can get clip-on easy to build Space Marines, which are sort of like what the Star Wars Legion troopers are. You can get 3 for $10. Now, that would actually work out as a lot cheaper per model. Well, 20 cents per model cheaper, whatever it is, but still cheaper. Now, you can get these, let's have a look, these Orc Boys and these Cadian Shock Troopers. You get 10 infantry units and you get them for $29. I think I've put $30 on my list. Many apologies, but I'm not to $1 here or there. But even so, $29 obviously for 10 is better than $25 for 7. And these models to me look just like classic GW, high quality, maybe not the newest level of quality like, you know, the new Primaris Marines or whatever, but more than capable, more than standard, decent quality miniatures. And if you look at the price of them, 10 for $30 or $29 would be either $2.90 or $3. You get the point, which is obviously cheaper per model. But then they have like different like tiers of infantry units. For example, 10 Chaos Space Marines Now maybe these are bigger Space Marines. It's hard for me to know for certain. I presume it is because they're larger. 10 of them are $39. Fair enough, that makes sense if they're bigger. And then you can go all the way up to the Primaris Intercessors, which are like your standard Primaris Space Marines, which are the bigger Space Marines. They're $60. Now you can get 10 Space Marines probably for $30 somewhere, but I'm just trying to show you that trying to compare GW's infantry, you have to go down a minefield of like the quality of the miniature, how many parts it comes with, the size of it, and it's really hard to be like this is the average, because there is no average. Now, I've always said that GW's miniature quality is very, very high, and you get what you pay for, basically. Like, you pay you $60 here, and then the unit's going to be very good. I'm not trying to say it's not. If anything, I'm trying to show here that in some cases, GW works out as cheaper per model than Star Wars Legion, right? The problem is the size of a standard tournament. Now, we already know that Star Wars Legion, they've said 800 points. That's what they're going to go with. That's their size. And we know we can have a decent guess of how many models you'll get in a standard size. I think the most models you can have right now is probably about 35 to 40 models in a Star Wars Legion army. So that's the maximum. Whereas, for example, in GW, depending on your army, it can vary possibly from 3 models to 100 models probably, depending if you've got like a swarm kind of army. So what I did, I went on the Blood of Kittens website and I was trying to look at tournament grade lists, right? So the Las Vegas Open was won by, now it was really difficult for me to interpret this list, but it was won by this list, right, which you possibly can't see very well. There was a couple of things that I couldn't properly find. Like I couldn't find the Cat Lady Warlord. I don't know who or what that is. And this seemed to be like a weird mix between Eldar and Dark Eldar, which I don't know if that's true. I just found it very hard. The interesting thing about this is the top 3 armies are pretty much all the same with slight variants. They're all the same sort of mix of units. So I just did the one because I couldn't be bothered doing all 3 because they were that similar. Anyway, the number of models in that army list equals, from my calculations, 76. So it's the number of models that are the problem here. Now, the total cost if you buy all of that at retail, now there might be cheaper ways of doing this at retail, you know, maybe like a starter set. But I looked at the starter sets and I couldn't see one where it was applicable. That doesn't mean that there's not. So this is just standard retail price. Without a discount, comes to $724. That is mentally high to me as an outcast, as an outsider, not an outcast. I mean, you can call me an outcast if you like. And I would argue that if you're going to a tournament, and I've picked 2,000 points because 1, that's the Las Vegas Open standard. 2, that's the Warhammer Grand Tournament standard, and that's a tournament that GW themselves run. So 2,000 seems to be that standard. But you would need your codex, your rules for the book, the rules for your army that you're currently running, at least one of them. If you're running like a detachment from a different one, you'd need 2. They're $40 each for the digital version. And you would need chapter approved, which is the yearly update of all the points and stuff. So that's what, $65 there. And you might, if you're running an army that's not from the core set, need the army book, but we'll not get onto that. So hopefully you can see that it's the actual, what I'm trying to say is, to me, it seems to be the army as a whole's cost rather than the individual model's cost. Now, there are exceptions to this for sure. I'm sure there are very much cheaper ways of getting to 2,000 points. You know, I think like the Titans, I forgot what they're called, the big Titan ones, I think you can maybe do like 3 of them, and that'll get you to 2,000 points, and I think they are about $100 each maybe, so you can have $300, you're done. The specific like elite armies, I think like Grey Knights or Grey Wolves, is it Grey Knights? I'm not sure. Some of them are elite armies that are probably cheaper to build because the number of models are cheaper. Maybe something like the Adeptus Custodes. Maybe. I haven't checked that out. But I'm fairly sure you can build cheaper lists. So I just use this because it was the tournament winning list, but don't take that as the average. Like, that's probably on the high side. So the next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to see what list you could make from the core set. So I just Googled around and I found the Frontline Gaming link that was basically them trying to make a list from what they thought people might already buy if they're like new to the hobby. And this is the list they came up with. And that still ended up being $5,530. You would still need your codex and your chapter approved if you were trying to go to tournaments. That's probably not the most efficient way of doing that. If you were trying to get, like, I think the Dark Imperium is it's $160 for sure, but if you bought 2 of them, you'd be able to actually make a 2,000 point army, I believe. It wouldn't be very good necessarily, but you'd be able to do it. So if we did that with the discounts, you could probably get it for $272. There's probably an even cheaper way of doing that, but I think taking 2 core sets and calling that a decent, like, I can't see it getting much cheaper than that in circumstances. So please don't post all the cheapest lists that you can create. If you think I'm wrong with my average as a whole, then I understand. Even if we add on the 20% discount to like this one, it's still $550. This one, it's still $424. Even if we said there was a way of getting it like pretty much half of that, that would still be $350. And this one would still be $250. Like, for sure, you can probably make cheaper lists, but on average, is a 2,000 point list going to be much different or much cheaper than $300? $300 would seem to be like maybe the level that it is for 2,000 points. That's what I'm saying. So the only other thing to cover is, what about Star Wars Legion? Well, I've already done a spreadsheet for Star Wars Legion, which was my like buyer's guide for noobs, but this includes a discount. And for a discounted or miniature market, you can pretty much get a full decent sized 800 point army pretty much for $150. Even if we scrapped the discount and we said maybe you needed more than that, well, we can say $250. I think that's fair. I don't think I'm being unreasonable when I say maybe like the average for a GW 2,000 point army is $250 to $500 probably. And the average now for Star Wars Legion 800 point army is $150 to $250. So, and that's excluding needing to buy the rules. Somebody did say that for Legion you would have to print out the rules. You don't have to print out the rules. Just if you've got a mobile phone, which a lot of people do, the rules are free and will continue to be free as far as we know. So, what have we concluded? It's not price per model. I think that much is almost for sure. In some cases it is, but it's very hard to compare like for like. So what I tried to do, whether or not you think it was successful or not, because I've literally picked the tournament, like one of the biggest tournament winning armies, and then I tried to pick one of the cheapest ones using the core sets. Whether or not you think that's fair, I understand, but I think most people would agree maybe $300 is probably about average right now, maybe. Let me know if you think that's right or wrong. My point being, it's not per model in some cases. It's hard to compare like for like because the clip-on Space Marines are cheaper than the Stormtroopers, but the Primaris like Intercessors, which are like full loads of miniatures, like loads of parts, loads of detail, high quality plastic, well, that's obviously more expensive than the Troopers. However, if we take a step back and we look at a full army-sized list, like a standard army size, I think Legion's going to edge it. Now, what I would think GW should do is be like, 2,000 points is too many. We should either up the points or lower the games. Now, it's in your friendly game store, you might be like, yeah, I'll play 1,500 points. I don't need to play 2,000 points. Or maybe you think I'll play 1,000 points, which is completely fine because I think like the Dark Imperium set will give you 1,000 points each, pretty much. And if you do that, yeah, you can. The game is cheaper because per model, it's not an issue. It's only per army where the problems start arising. And that, to me, sort of implies that GW could possibly look in the future to controlling the amount of miniatures required, both on a hobby, how long it takes to paint stance, and now on a competitive, we don't want you to spend, well, we do want you to spend, but when you compare it like this, people might side on the favour of Legion rather than GW's 40k, and they might be like, nah, I actually want you to play 40k. So And to be fair, they do have those elite armies. Like, maybe I should have done an Adeptus Custodes army. They're like an elite army, probably small model count. What is the average price of an Adeptus Custodes army? Do let me know in the comments below. I don't mean to continually poke this hornet's nest. I made this video to be like, per model, GW and Legion, they're not that dissimilar. Some are cheaper, some are more expensive. Fine. GW probably higher quality. I would guess for price per quality, GW almost certainly better, right? And then I was like, well, what is the issue here? It's per army. So the standard tournament size, if we use 2,000, that's obviously more expensive than a Legion army of 800 points. Forget the points, irrelevant comparison, but a full army, GW more expensive. Now, if GW 40k lowers that, it might get to a point where it's actually a lot more even. If they started doing their own tournaments at 1,500 points, I think this conversation would be less relevant. Yes, I do think 40k will still be a little bit more expensive because you need the codex, you need the chapter approved. But if you're playing friendly games, then just buy the start collecting sets and the core sets, and you won't have a problem. You can get to a decent sized army that way. But that's my point. Like, if you're playing competitive, it's more expensive. If you're playing casually, it doesn't really matter. You can just play whatever size battles you want with any army you like. Ooh, I don't know about this video. I'll watch it back. We'll see how much I've annoyed people, and then we'll probably put it out. I'm hoping not to be super controversial with this. I always do like a little bit of a clickbait title, so I do apologize about that. But hopefully you'll like this video, even if you disagree with me. But if you do disagree with me, I would like some specifics of why. As I said, I know you can get elite armies. It's hard to average out when there's so many armies. But, you know, if you reckon the average is wrong and I've just skew-whiffed my calculations, then do let me know. All the links will be in the description below. Like, share, subscribe, have a beautiful day, and goodbye. Bye, guys.